Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Welcome back. It is me, Cyberwarrior. This is Cyberwarrior Studios, and it's Security Happy Hour. So, needless to say, normally I have two people on here, but guess what? Today we got one. We got Harley Kimball. I had a last-minute cancellation, but it's all good. All right, I'm not mad at it. People get sick. Things happen. Not a whole lot you can do. But either way, here we are. So, Harley actually got a hold of me last week, maybe 2 weeks ago now.
Yep.
You know, we had a little bit of a discussion about what he's doing, what I'm doing, just trying to catch up. He's doing a lot of big things, trying to make a lot of things happen in a short period of time. But at the end of the day, he's still part of the community. So why not get people on here that are part of the community? I don't care. New, old, veterans, it never mattered to me, and it can continue to not matter to me. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a voice. And especially with what's going on today with FireEye and the community, kind of a lot of us coming together, but you still see those outliers. They're like, burn FireEye. Like, no. All right. So we're going to talk about that a little bit as well as some other things. But before we get started, why don't we let Harley go ahead and introduce himself and kind of tell us where he's coming from and what he's doing now. And we'll go from there.
Cool. So what's up, everybody? My name's Harley. I run a YouTube channel called Infinite Logins, just like a cheesy little hacker handle. But I've been working in IT as like a sysadmin, IT admin, network admin type role for about the last 4 years or so. But I've always had this huge passion for ethical hacking, cybersecurity. I've always like had that dream of being a pen tester, right? Like I think when most of us go through school in some sort of cybersecurity degree program, people talk about like, well, what do you want to do when you graduate? And pen tester is always like the top 3 in the list, right? If not number 1, because it's kind of the most sexy, right? Most people are like, man, I want to hack and get paid, So that was kind of like something I had always wanted to do. And then I started working just, the typical IT route, right? Doing help desk and getting promoted along the way. And I think for a while, once I got out of school and started working in IT, I became stagnant. Like I think a lot of people do, where it's just like you become comfortable, and then you start to think like, well, maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe like to become a pen tester or an ethical hacker, you've got to have like an insane skill set, right? But that all changed for me about a year ago. I went to DEF CON in 2019, and just being in that community, being around everybody, it was awesome. It's like I belong here, like this is where I want to be. These are the type of people I want to be with. And I talked with a lot of pen testers while I was there, and I was like, how do you do it? How do you do it? And I just tried to learn. So I realized if I'm ever going to make it happen, like I'm going to have to be the one that makes it happen, So I got home, signed up for the OSCP, and it's just been a crazy journey ever since. I started doing a ton of meetups, ton of groups, meeting people, networking as much as I could. And fast forward, like I guess in June of this year, I got an internship as an actual pen tester. I had already started to take some of the ethical hacking stuff I learned and start to bring like internal network assessments as a new service offering for the MSP I was working at. I started doing that probably in like January, February. But then when COVID hit, everything slowed down. No one was spending money. And so I knew like where I was at wasn't going to work for me to be a pen tester. So that's when I started doing the internship with an actual company, a pen testing firm based out of Seattle in June. They liked my work. They brought me on as a subcontractor, and I've been doing that ever since. So it's been awesome, So I'm very new to the field. I would say like about 6 months to a year of professional pen testing experience. But I'm definitely not new to the cybersecurity community. I've been very involved with that for quite a while.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. And the fact that you basically went from a job to an internship is huge. And some people aren't lucky enough to do that, right? So some people in college can do that or fresh out of college. But when you're already in your career, whether it be IT or maybe you're coming from a completely different career path, it's very difficult to jump into an internship, which is usually paying a lot less, if nothing. So the fact that you're able to do that is huge. And
to share a little more about that, actually, the internship was unpaid. And I did that as a part-time thing in addition to the full-time gig I was working. So I turned out, instead of working the 45 hours a week in my day job, Now I'm working like 70, 80 hours a week total if you combine the stuff I'm doing in the day job with the stuff I'm doing on evenings and weekends for free as an intern.
And that's a good way to do it. I mean, as long as you either, how do I put this, some companies, especially MSSPs that offer security as a service, may frown upon doing something like that. But granted, it was unpaid. It wasn't like you were stealing business, so you can get into the ethics of it later. But at the end of the day, it was something that got you into the career you wanted. All right, so I'm not going to complain about it. Some companies may, but I'm not one of them. Simply because we have to do what's going to benefit us for our future and for the careers that we want. All right, you can't always, as long as you're not taking business from a client or from a company that you're working for. I've never had a problem. If you want to moonlight, if you want to do whatever, you go for it. If you can honestly keep up the work at both jobs, go for it. Like, I've never seen an issue with that as long as you're still producing for the jobs that are paying you and not stealing business from one or the other. So,
Sure.
Again, I applaud you for being able to do that and being able to make it happen for yourself, because that is huge. Now, pen testing, you said it right. All right, so it is the sexy of security. Everybody loves pen testing or wants to get into pen testing or red teaming or hacking, whatever term they want to put on it, however they want to spin it, that's what everybody wants to do. But, and this is where I saw a tweet or a LinkedIn message, I think it was a tweet, either earlier today, I don't know, I've been seeing a few of them over the past few months, where it's like, hey, you just learned Security Plus, let me be a hacker.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, look, guys, before you even get into Security Plus, you have to understand networking. And
yeah,
or at the very least, system administration, because you can get into both sides of it, right? So there is the networking side where you have to understand ports, port security, and everything else like that. But then there's also the sysadmin side. If you know how to exploit a Windows box, you may not necessarily understand the networking side, but you can always talk to somebody about, hey, why might this may or may not work? I've always gone on the side of caution of, I want to know the sysadmin and networking side, right? So I want to know how Windows talks, or Linux or Mac or whatever you're going after, and I want to know how networking works, because I've got to know that communication channel. So for some of your exploit developers out there, people that like to that's all they do is develop exploits, and they do bug bounties and things like that. They don't have to really know networking. Like, if we're honest about it, they don't, because they're just going after the operating system. So if you understand,
or they understand web apps.
Exactly. So if you understand the web application or the coding behind the software, the programming or whatever, then it makes it a lot easier, and you can go after it that way. But for those that want to truly become pen testers or truly become red teamers, then networking and understanding the infrastructure is key. All right, and that's sure. Coding, that's everything. It doesn't matter.
And I would, I think anyone who's like looking to get started, trying to become an ethical hacker, it was extremely beneficial for me having that 4 years of like foundational IT experience where I was doing sysadmin work, I was doing network admin work. So understanding how the technology works and how to build it, I think is extremely important and extremely valuable, because later when you're attacking that technology, you're able to understand it from, okay, well, I know how it works and how it functions, and I understand what it takes to build it. So let me go target those pieces of the functionality. And it just makes a lot more sense when you've got that background knowledge. I think if I were to have tried to dive right into pen testing fresh out of school, I think I would have struggled a lot, So yeah, if you're looking to get into especially network penetration testing, then having a sort of like sysadmin role, I think, is, like you mentioned, super valuable.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things I think some people fail to realize, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong before. I've been known to be wrong. My wife will tell you I'm wrong all the time. But, it's one of those things where we always have to be learning. So even if you may be trying to get into it, even for those that say you don't need to know networking or system administration, if you are researching ethical hacking or hacking in general, you're going to end up researching networking. You're going to end up researching operating systems. You're going to end up researching code. So you might as well just start with that because you're going to have to do it anyways. I mean, if we really think about it, you unless you honestly think you're going to get into this field and be a superstar or a rock star without ever having to know any of that or ever having to continue to learn, and go ahead, you're just going to fall off the radar like a lot of the other people that try to do it. But you have to continue to develop yourself and improve your knowledge base. And in order to do that, you have to continue to learn. I've got a stack. I got shelves of books. I got books all around me. I've got tools and toys and things that I love to play with, and I'm sure you do as well, Harley. So it's one of those things where we have to continue to develop, and I think people forget that. People forget that.
And I think that's the most important. You know, I don't know if anyone's going to be watching this who's thinking about getting into ethical hacking or a career in pen testing, but if you are, you know, don't let what we're saying discourage you. Don't be like, well, crap, I don't have any IT experience. I'm going to have to just restart, because that's kind of where I was. A lot of people told me that. And so I started with the traditional IT route. And then I think I just stayed there too long. Like, I don't think I needed the full 4 years. But I did learn a lot during that time. But at some point, I quit learning as much at that job, where I would have learned more if I had pivoted sooner. But I think it's important to understand you learning on your own is an extremely important thing. And even after we become pen testers, we'll quickly become irrelevant, because the attacks we know today won't work in a year, and the attacks that come out in a year we don't know about today. So if we're not learning those things, we're not going to be successful in our jobs.
Now, why do you have to lie? We've seen old Excel macro malware come back. All right.
Okay.
And MS-08067 is still viable on those older XP operating systems that people still use. So let's be honest with ourselves.
Windows 7. So yes, older attack vectors you're definitely going to use. When we find them, I don't know about you, but it's like as soon as I see that, I'm looking at my Nessus scan before I'm starting like an internal assessment. It's like MS-17010 or Blue Keep, and I'm like, this is going to be a piece of cake. You know, if they've got unpatched machines on the network, the rest of who knows what else is out there, and that's just going to make this easy.
For sure. And that's one of the things, right? So let's pivot from that a little bit, and because I mentioned it earlier, let's talk about FireEye, right? So everybody wanted to get on FireEye. FireEye, who's been huge. They came out with a bunch of VMs for threat hunting and reverse engineering malware, and then offensive security, all Windows based. And they are very, very big in the offensive security space and the blue team side as well, with everything that they develop. And it's funny because everybody wants to bash them and be like, oh, they should have been better, they should have never been breached, and this, that, and the third. When the reality of it is, there's only two types of companies out there: those that have been breached and those that don't know it yet.
Yeah.
And it's not preventing the breach that people get, that I get mad at, right? Because we know it's not possible to be 100% secure. It is impossible. Employees are going to make mistakes, or our systems are going to go, you know, they're not going to get patched because of whatever reason for that week or 2 weeks, whatever the case may be. So someone's going to slip through the cracks. It's when it comes down to lateral movement for me. That's always my problem. If you don't have systems in place to prevent lateral movement throughout your network, that's where I pose an issue, because it's one thing to laterally move through clients, but if they can hit the server, now there's an issue. And that's where some people don't realize that it is very, very hard to do those things without proper network segmentation. And like, I don't know what was taken from them. I don't know all the details, right? I looked it up. I saw that they were breached. I saw that there was a bunch of tools they were worried about, like, hey, these are all our Yara walls and everything else. But the reality of it is, really, what was taken? What really did they take? And are there things they're not telling us?
So FireEye is a really respected name in the industry for sure. They actually were the first pen testing firm I ever heard of. When I was going through school, I knew a guy who used to work as a social engineer for FireEye. He specialized in the on-site social engineering engagements for them. And so I coming back to a little bit about networking, like I paid for a lunch for us to sit down, me and some buddies, and we just asked them a ton of questions. So FireEye, like anytime I hear that brand, I think of that that moment. It's almost got like a special place in my story because it was inspiring to me to become a pen tester because of that guy I met. But I think what's really cool about the way that FireEye handled this breach, I think that that's something that we can really take away. Like more businesses and more companies, when they get breached, they should look at FireEye as kind of like, this is a great example of what to disclose. This is how to do it correctly. And I think that that's really important because, like you mentioned, it's inevitable. Everybody's going to get hit at some point. And so trying to hide it or sweep it under the rug, right? Like that a lot of companies are doing. It's not the right approach to take, and it can be super damaging to a lot of people. But FireEye was very upfront about, this is what happened. This is what we believe is happening. Even when they didn't know what was happening, I think still they're probably not sure 100% of what's happening or what happened. But they were releasing information as they had it. And the next step they took, which was, we're worried that all these tools got into the wrong hand, these red team tools. Let's go out and let's help create indicators of compromise scripts that you can start running against your infrastructure as a blue team. And you can look to see, are these tools being used against you? And I think that that's really cool, that obviously that's something they had to think about ahead of time, because it would probably take a while to develop those tools. Or at least, the public information that helps you detect whether or not those tools were being used in your environment. So that's really cool.
Well, not to cut you off there, but let's think about that. How long, you got to think, these IOCs, the Yara rules, everything they created, was it something they did preemptively just in case? So, hey,
that's my thought, yeah.
If you're going to develop a tool, if you're going to develop an exploit, if you're going to develop a way in or any type of TTP, make sure you create that blue team mechanism that A, our own team can defend against or find, and B, so in case of, break glass, in case of emergency, we're going to release these, right? So we're not going to release the tools. We're not going to say, hey, these are the offensive tools that we're taking. What we're going to do is we're going to release, hey, this is how you find out if our shit is being used in the wild.
And you've got to prepare those. I would think you've got to prepare those ahead of time, because when you're in the middle of the fire, right, like it might be all hands on deck. People that wouldn't necessarily be working as part of an incident response team might be more involved in the process if something like crazy is going down, but trying to rush and create these blue team tools to help detect this after the fact is definitely the wrong approach. And it seemed like they had them ready right away. So I would definitely think that they prepared them ahead of time as part of their incident response plan. That's something that they had.
So does that lead us to believe that FireEye was better prepared than the NSA?
I thought you were about to say. Does that lead us to believe that FireEye was behind the hack?
No. I don't. But, I mean, who knows? But
yeah.
Really, because if we look at it, right, and if you say these tools were leaked, here's the defensive mechanisms behind it. Like I said, I do think that was preemptive. They did that as a break glass in case of emergency. This is our IR plan. The NSA didn't do that. There was never anything released that I saw from a blue team perspective of, hey, this is how you catch someone that is using our tool set.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, you would think a company like FireEye, because the government, at least departments within the government, and you might know better than me coming from a military background, but they would hire the companies like FireEye to come in and do consulting work. So you would think that maybe FireEye would give that as a recommendation, like, look, if you're going to develop these tools, you should also make sure you've got this other piece developed. So I would expect FireEye to, actually be better positioned than even the NSA, but because that's what they do. That's the core of everything they do. And
well, I think it goes back to the bureaucracy within the government. Hey, we're gonna have red team tools and break into things and have 0 days, but we're not gonna build anything to protect ourselves, or we are, but we're not gonna let the public know how to protect themselves, because then the other guys can. It's So not to get in the bureaucratic mess that is the government in all countries. I don't care who you are. It's all countries. It's a bureaucratic nightmare. But going back to FireEye, yeah, I think they did a really good job. I do. And I do support them. I support what they've done. I support what they do. And I think that they had the right response to it by not trying to hide it. The moment they saw it, or at least from what we know, the moment they saw it, they said, hey, this happened. This is what we saw. This is what we've seen. Here's how you go about doing things, for X, Y, and Z. Now, can we with 100% certainty say they've told us everything? No. But every company, and just like anything, are going to do things to kind of stop the bleeding.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect them to either, because at some point, oversharing is definitely a problem. It can cause more panic, and it's not worth it at that point. And you still do have a brand you have to protect. It does raise a conversation about security companies, because in my experience overall, when a security company has an incident, I feel like they always have and Sophos is another example. When I worked at the MSP, we were using Sophos for the XG firewall appliances, and they had a pretty crazy 0-day that got identified, and they released a hotfix for it, but it allowed full compromise of the firewall, which can be critical because that could allow an attacker inside the network. And so when they had that problem, the way that they handled it, announcing it, and this is what you need to do, this is what we've already done, here's everything we know, and here are the dates and the timestamps and all that stuff. And I thought that the way they handled that was really good. And then I look at another company that we were using that had a breach around the same time, and it was just a vulnerability with the version of the software that runs on our domain controllers. And instead of being upfront about the vulnerability, they sent out an email blast, and they're like, upgrade within the next 72 hours, upgrade to the latest version, and we'll send you a $10 gift card. They're trying to make it like this gamify thing that's like, this is going to be an awesome update with all these cool features, but you need to do it right now. But they don't tell you why. And then I had to dig and pry because I was into this stuff. And so I ended up finding out it was a local privilege escalation vulnerability that could allow them to take over a domain controller. But it's those are two very different companies. And it's every time I've ever seen a breach on a security company, they always have awesome, I don't know what the word is, but the way they disclose the breach.
Well, the disclosure, generally speaking, is really good. But we've seen, and I ain't going to say all security companies, because look at a lot of your MSSPs. There's been several MSSPs that are technically security companies. That's what they offer. It is a managed security service, right?
That's what they brand themselves as.
But they've been breached, which has led to bigger compromises because now all their clients' data gets breached, right? Yeah. So we've seen a lot of that happen where people aren't targeting the companies per se, right? The individual clients are like, you know what? We're just going to go after who manages them, who manages their architecture, who manages their security. Right. We're going to go after that.
A huge target.
Oh, yeah. And as an MSSP, you should have better security than your clients.
So I come from an MSP background. That's where I worked for the past 4 years. And I've met a lot of MSP owners, and I've had conversations with them. And a lot of them see the MSSP piece of the pie. They see that as a easy way to make money. They're like, well, look, we can just start charging. We're already charging our customers a lot of money just to manage their IT. But that doesn't include a bunch of security stuff. That might include AV and patch management, but that's about it. So let's throw in a new bucket. We'll call ourselves an MSSP. We'll do security monitoring and stuff, but they don't really take it serious. Maybe we'll throw them into a know before. Maybe we'll do a little user awareness training. We might up the level of AV we provide. So now it does behavior or intercept X, where it can revert ransomware. Maybe they do application whitelisting, but in reality, you don't actually have security experts necessarily. They just are using other third-party solutions that they can resell you for a profit.
Yeah,
and that's what a lot of them think about that.
I've seen that. I've seen some that truly are doing really well as MSSPs, so they have that security tag in there, and they are doing really well. But to your point, there are those MSPs that throw it in as kind of like, oh, security is important. Let's throw that in and make money right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they don't worry about their back end. And I think that's one of the things that I give credit to one of my older companies that I used to work for, because like you, I worked for an MSSP and I was a security engineer, and we did a lot with SIM and things of that nature, and there was a lot more that we did. But we, as our analysts and our engineers, not only managed the SIM and managed the security infrastructure for our clients, but a lot of the responsibility of the internal network fell on us too, right? So yep. If we had dedicated architecture and infrastructure for our internal network that our analysts were responsible for, and at least anything that and that's something that I think a lot of MSPs that get into that extra S, that security space, neglect, is anything we used for our clients, we used internally. We didn't vet things and just go to partners and be like, oh, we're going to sell your stuff, but never use it. Right. No. We used it. We literally vetted it. We would use it internally, so we knew how to set it up, how to manage it, how to maintain it, and how to really look at the security side of things and how all that worked. So I think that's something that a lot of these companies get away from, and that's why the ones that have been breached that I know of, and I don't know the names off the top of my head, I saw a lot of articles earlier this year about it, and I think last year, were ones I'd never heard of, because they may have been large MSPs, but as far as the security space, they were very small and didn't have a lot of play.
And it's really scary for that, because like you've mentioned, as a hacker, why waste my time going after individual companies if I can target an MSP, especially an MSP that's not doing it right, because there's plenty of them out there. If I could target one that's not doing it right, then a single compromise may allow for me to have, if I can compromise their RMM system, what they use to remote into other computers or run scripts on all of their customers' machines, that's a single easy place for me to deploy ransomware or whatever it is I'm looking to do as a malicious actor. And there's a lot of companies that aren't taking it as serious as they need to in the MSP space.
Oh, for sure. And if you look at it, if you get that MSSP or MSP, then a lot of times they will internalize their passwords or whatever. So they may not be using a password manager, or even if they are, you still have those admins that are like, man, I got 30 different clients I got to worry about. We're just going to put this into OneNote or OneDrive or whatever the case may be. Yeah. We're going to put it on a shared drive somewhere. Guess what? The moment that compromise happens, I now have full access to all of your clients that you have access to.
Yep,
because
exactly.
I've grabbed all those passwords. So not only have I gotten you, I've gotten all your clients.
And the goal of an MSP, so for those that aren't familiar, the traditional way to do IT services, or it's like a break fix thing. Like, I've got a problem with my computer, I'll call up my IT guy, he comes and he fixes it, and then he sends me an invoice for X number of hours that it took him to fix it, right? So you pay by the hour. But the MSP model completely changes that. It makes it to where I don't care if you call us 5 times or you call us 100 times, your bill is always going to be the same. You're going to pay the same flat rate every single month. So it changes how MSPs approach these deals, and it changes how they support their customers, because whereas before they were looking for ways to generate extra work, and maybe that's selling, some security product or whatever, they're looking for ways to bill more hours so their revenue goes up. But when you do an MSP contract, which is what everyone needs nowadays, but it creates this problem now where the less time the MSP has to spend servicing you or configuring your network in a secure manner or looking for issues, the more profitable they are and the less employees they need and all that, right? So because of that, MSPs a lot of them will cut corners to maximize profits. And a lot of them will also try to implement as much as they can to make it to where they never have to go on site. So anything they can do to make it to where their work is remote and as remote as possible, they're going to do, because they can do multiple things remotely, but can only do one thing on site.
But remote isn't the problem, right? We have ways to secure that connection, and we have ways, but you said it, cut corners. Yes. So what are they going to do? They're going to use any type of easy button that they can use.
A
And
lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are doing that.
and that easy button is prime real estate for attackers.
Yeah.
For those that are malicious, it is prime real estate because they know there's going to be a default password or an easy password or something that they can just get by. And a lot of people, unfortunately, though, and this is where I'll come to the defense of any MSP, any MSSP, any company out there. What I have seen a lot of, and please in the comments, if you're watching, correct me if I'm wrong. What I have seen a lot of is it has not been networking. It has not been, well, web app has been huge, but it's either been web app misconfigurations, i.e. SQLI or anything like that, or it's been phishing.
Oh yeah.
Those are the two ways people are getting in. So it's your web designers, so whether back end or front end, it's your designers for your web applications, and it is phishing emails that are getting by. And you mentioned KnowBe4. Don't get me wrong. KnowBe4 is a great company. They're offering a great service. I will not bash any company that is attempting to educate personnel. I personally, just because of what I've seen, have a huge issue with computer-based training, especially in terms of cyber awareness.
Yes.
And the reason I have an issue with it is every employee, or I can't say every, most employees look at it as a waste of time. They're going to click the next arrow until they can get through it, or they're going to put the video on mute and go watch something they really want to watch or do something like their work. And then they're going to go about their day, right? So they're not going to pay attention. My form of training, and I get it, companies are going to hate it. It takes time out of their day. It crushes their bottom dollar. Not really, but let's be honest. They make enough money as it is. Now, not your small businesses, not your not even your medium businesses, but your large corporations. Yeah, technically it takes away from their bottom dollar, but they're making enough money as it is that your employees that sit behind a desk really can afford to lose a few hours out of their day to get properly trained on phishing emails. And I'm sorry if you're a CEO, a CISO, a CIO, a CTO, if you have that C in your name, you can afford to sit in a class and learn how to recognize phishing emails.
So let me tell you a story,
you get
man.
Fished regularly.
Yeah. Let me tell you a story. So I love what you said about computerized training being terrible, and that's a big move that I'm trying to make. That's part of the reason I started a YouTube thing, where it originally started as like, I want to create custom content to provide user awareness training for the average business professional. And that actually opened the doors where companies were asking me, hey, can you make custom content for me? And so there's definitely a need for that. But I pivoted now. I talk more about like, this is a cool attack I learned. I'm going to make a video of it, right? That's like the type of stuff I do now on my YouTube channel. But the story. So KnowBe4, they do one thing really well, and that's helping people identify red flags in phishing emails for those that actually go through and take part in the training and listen. But I was on a social engineering engagement for a major company. They had like 7,000 users. They're all over especially the like southern part of the United States. Super big company that I think a lot of people would recognize the brand for. And we did a social engineering engagement where we had to go on site, and everything was in scope. We had phishing, and like the on-site social engineering aspect. I'm really happy that all three were in scope because it ended up being an awesome engagement, super successful on our part. But it started out really rough. So it was black box. We didn't have any email, so we just crawled LinkedIn, created our own email list as best we could, and we started sending phishing emails out. This was like day one. This is what we're doing. None of them were making it through. Like nobody clicked. Nobody opened them. We couldn't get them through phishing. So we ended up flying out there, and we go on site to one of the buildings, dress up as construction workers. We just walk around in the warehouse. No one asked us why we're there. We walked right past the security gate. Piece of cake. So we're walking around the warehouse, taking pictures of everything. We come across a computer, and it's got a sticky note on the monitor, of course, with credentials to a Office 365 mailbox. Snap a quick photo of that. I move on We're doing other stuff. So we get back home or get back to the hotel room that night. I pull out my phone. I'm going through my photos. I find that sticky note. I'm like, okay, cool. And I log into Office 365. No MFA, just get logged right in. So now I've got a mailbox that I've compromised, and I use PowerShell to export a copy of the address book. And again, this is black box, so it's huge. So I've got this address book, and now I've got a list of all 7,000, email accounts, phone numbers, extensions, titles, who the managers are, all that cool stuff. But what was really, really key for us was the phone numbers, because we couldn't get them. We tried like 80 different emails, and our phishing was just failing. When we were on site, we recognized they were using KnowBe4. So they were actually doing a decent job at detecting the phishing.
So with that though, what you got to be cognizant of, and something I've noticed, so I use Recon NG and like the Discover scripts on Kali to kind of pull an OSINT report for a lot of different companies, right? And I've done it just to help. Like when I worked for my old MSSP, I did it just so, as an example, like, hey, I can use this, and no, not all these emails will be valid, but some of them will. And that's the thing you got to look at when you're scrolling. Like you went through LinkedIn. Now, did you go manually through each individual profile, or did you run some type of script that just crawled the web and pulled it? Like, did you use Recon NG or Harvester?
See, we talked about it. We were like, man, I wish we had a script that could do it, because we just did it manually. But I'm sure if we just took a second, we would have found.
So there's several steps you need to take, and there's a reason for that. So at least you did the right thing, right? Going through LinkedIn, you will find a lot of profiles, a lot of emails, and there's ways to do it. And it sounds like you did it right, and you did it the hard way, but it's the right way, right? When you do it manually, you're finding a lot of good information, and you're finding a lot of valid information. What I was going to say is if you ran a script to do it, like I use Discover scripts for Kali, and which usually uses Recon NG and the Harvester, you will get a lot of old emails and a lot of old people that used to work there.
Right.
And I have literally compiled lists of email addresses and been like, what? Yeah. And then you go and look, and you're like, they haven't worked there for like 5 years. Like, why do I have this email address?
Right. The other factor for us is this is a company that has dozens of locations in almost every state. So we wanted to make sure we were only going to 2 states. We only went to 2 separate locations, and we wanted to make sure the locations we were hitting, we were also phishing the people at those spots. Not that we had to, but we wanted to, because then if we got those guys phished, that might help us later on for phishing or on site. We wanted to try to link them where we could. But once we had that phone list, this is where the story gets exciting, because up to this point, KnowBe4 has been all that they needed to keep them safe. Well, that's not true. They should have questioned us while we were on site. They shouldn't have had the sticky note. That's 100%. Both of those things are true. But KnowBe4 did a really good job protecting email, protecting that one attack vector. Those other things, wide open, too easy to do. But now that we've got this calling list, we started calling people, and most of them wouldn't answer, but 60% of the ones that did answer, and I'm not exaggerating, that's like the actual number, 60% of the ones that did answer either gave us their password and accepted the MFA prompt over the phone, or they went to a link that we directed them to and they signed in themselves and then accepted the MFA prompt because we told them, oh yeah, that'll be expected in about 10 minutes. So, and we had a complete just heyday, and we got people, from warehouse workers to like district managers, like all kinds of different rankings within the company. So it just goes to show that KnowBe4 might do its one job correctly, but if that's your entire security program, you're going to get bit, and you're going to get bit hard. And I love telling that story because I think it's powerful.
Oh yeah, and phishing's huge, right? So no matter what you do, if you can gain physical access to a building without being questioned, without any issues,
yeah,
you're done already. But even bigger for me on that, right, is phishing, because people are so willing over the phone to give up information. Like, oh, you got my number, which means you must know me.
Yeah, exactly. And if you spoof calling from from like an internal number, they're
Yeah.
gonna be like, oh yeah, you do work for the company in the IT department. You're right.
Exactly. And so I look at that because I did a few videos. Like, so back in October, I did a few videos on phishing and vishing and smishing because SMS phishing
Yep.
has, become prevalent. And I look at these things, and for me, I laugh, right? I get calls all the time like, oh, your iCloud account has been hacked.
Yeah.
Really? Where? How? Tell me
Yeah.
now. And then they hang up on me. I get overly sarcastic. So I laugh when I get to see the videos of people actually being able to drag this on with these guys because
Right.
they hang up on me.
Yeah.
Even the IRS ones or Social Security ones, they all hang up on me. I'm like, when I get some Indian dude that doesn't work for Social Security, like I know outright just by, hey, so what's your name? Well, why don't you tell me? Because you called me.
Exactly. So, I think what you're talking about here is something that is important when we're talking about awareness training, because I think a lot of people now, I mean, obviously not everybody, because scammers are still doing it and they're still successful. But I think a lot of people now know if I get a phone call from the IRS or I get a phone call from Microsoft saying that my computer has been hacked and I need to let these guys come in and have remote control of my machine, I think a lot of them know, hey, this isn't legitimate, it's a scam, right? And I think that most people would feel safe with that. However, a lot of their thinking around security and being and questioning people who call you and don't actually authenticate is like fitting that profile. You've got an accent, you're asking, you're with an outside brand like Microsoft, right? That I'm not necessarily associated with. It's easy for me to shun that away. But what if you get a phone call from someone who doesn't have an accent, someone who's friendly, that can talk to you like you and I, and they say, hey, we work with your IT department of your current company, and we need you to do this thing. People don't connect it the same way.
And
People look at that as this is real.
And that's legitimately it, right? When we hear, and look, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to stereotype, I'm not trying to be racist, anything like that. But here in the United States, if we hear somebody with an accent, especially a foreign accent that is more than likely like Indian or from India, then we are going to automatically assume one of two things: scam or support. That's just the assumption we make. And again, it's not it's not trying to be, prejudiced or anything. It's just when we pick up a phone and that's what we hear, oh, this is support. So when I hear someone from the IRS, which, come on, let's be honest, that's all a bunch of white male dudes that really don't have a clue what they're doing, and it's supposed to be from the IRS, Social Security, and you hear this, you're like, come on.
Yeah.
But to your point,
again,
if you hear someone like me, hey, this is so-and-so from IT support, can I please have this, da-da-da-da. Oh, really? Oh, yeah, sure, you can have all of my bank information.
Well, what was really funny, so one of the tactics we used was an email migration scheme. We're like, hey, we're migrating you guys from Office 365 to G Suite this weekend. We need to verify your account's going to work in the new platform, so please sign in before this weekend, or you're going to be locked out come Monday.
I love that scheme.
It's awesome. So we sent that out through email. That was our phishing vector. And then we vished them over the phone when it didn't work, right? We tried to target the same people. And even though they knew the email was fake, they never thought we'd call. And so when I would open the call, I would say, hey, we sent an email out earlier this week, but it seems like maybe you missed it. We haven't got a response from you. I just want to make sure you're not going to get locked out of your email. And they're like, oh, well, I saw that email. I just thought it was a scam. And I just would laugh with them. I'd be like, no, that's us. We're here at the migrations team.
Wow.
And then they'd be like, oh, well, let me go dig up the email. I'm like, no worries. You know what? I could just take care of it for you. Or, I can give you the website to go to, or I can take care of it for you. Whatever you're more comfortable with. I'd have to ask for your password. So I don't know if you're cool with that. And they would say, half of them would say, I don't care. I'm in a hurry. Here's my password. The other half would go to the website I directed them to. And because it was a custom domain name that had their company name in it, they're like, yeah, this is real. But it wasn't their domain,
I had one before I started working full time after I retired from the Army back in 2017. I had a buddy who was like, hey, we need to do this pen test. Can you help out? Yeah, sure, no problem. SE Toolkit stood up a clone of their VPN page because their VPN page, VPN login page was publicly accessible, which makes sense. I mean, a lot of times to get the client or whatever, you have to access it externally to get it. It's like, all right. So I cloned it. He had an email from the CISO, I believe it was. And so he cloned her signature and then created a fake domain that resembled their domain. So it wasn't even their domain. It just resembled their domain. It basically squatting, and sent the email to their entire directory that he had, including the CISO, the person we sent the email from.
That's funny.
Why you're going to click a link from yourself is beyond me, but okay. We had, I would say, 70% of the emails we sent out, I had their passwords within 2 minutes.
That's crazy.
Of the email going out.
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah.
Are you kidding me? And when I saw her name pop up, I was like, this has to be a joke.
Yeah.
We used Did you send that email? Were you the one to send that email? No, you were not. Why would you do this?
It's a very real thing that we're laughing about, right? Because this is our job and we're getting paid to come in and we can laugh about it because we're not malicious. We're coming in and we're just proving a point. But the thing is, it's scary, man. This is real. These are companies that we work with that have our data, that have our information, have our parents or siblings, people we care about. And these are very real issues that enough people aren't taking serious enough. I think KnowBe4 is great for those who want to get some insight into, like, let me just roll out a quick phishing campaign with a big template, and I can get some data. I can say out of this campaign, 20% of my employees clicked, 5% of them typed whatever. Your numbers are going to be higher than that, most likely. But it's helpful for that piece. But the training piece is something that a lot of people struggle with.
The training is slacking, and it's because it's all about money.
Yeah.
So if we can offer mass training for you to sit behind your desk for 10 minutes versus mass training for you to go to a class for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it may be, I'm going to take the 10 minutes because then my employees can get right back to work.
But why don't people connect that getting hit with a breach costs money? And
because they have cyber insurance now.
Exactly.
I stand by the fact, and I think me and you talked about this when we talked last time, cyber insurance is going to destroy any training.
So I think that if it's done right, it can help. But you're 100% correct.
You have to have done your due diligence.
This is what I think.
Done the right thing. And if you're not doing that, that insurance shouldn't cover you. Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I had a conversation with an MSP owner, 2 of them actually, just yesterday, because I'm trying to set up partnerships where I can come in and offer, or at least help MSPs offer pen testing services to their customers. So I was talking with them. We talked about that, how we'd line it all up. And then at the end of the call, I just straight up asked them, like, so have you guys ever had a pen test yourselves? And they said no. And I asked why? Like, tell me the reason why you guys don't have pen tests. And, the answers I got back, I didn't really like. But one of the answers was that insurance answer. It's like, well, I've got cyber insurance. So, if I do get hit with a breach, that should cover me financially and blah, blah, blah. And so what you're talking about is very real. That's how business owners think. And it's a problem, but I think it's a problem with the insurance companies. Because if the insurance companies would price out the people who don't want to take things serious, right? Like, we'll give you an insurance policy, but it's going to cost you way too much if you're not doing training and if you're not doing pen tests on a regular basis and if you're not able to prove all of these aspects as part of due diligence.
But let me stop you there, because PCI is the same concept, right? You look at PCI DSS, it is the same concept. We are going to fine you if you don't do these things. But you look at the auditors, you look at the regulation itself. And please, again, I am going to say this for anybody that watches this video, whether now or in the future, go ahead and put it in the comments. If I am wrong, please tell me I'm wrong. It is a check the box. 9 times out of 10, companies will go out there and they will say, oh, yeah, I have a firewall. Oh, you want logs? Here you go. Meanwhile, they're not protecting anything.
Yeah.
And I've worked for companies, I'm not going to say who. If you want to go ahead and do your OSINT, you can figure out who I'm talking about. I've worked for companies where passwords, we would do basically we wanted to initiate a wall of shame, where if I cracked your password, you were put on the wall of shame. And if you were within IT or security, it was even more so shame on you. But I kid you not, every quarter of it, well, I was only there for 2 quarters, but both quarters that I did it, I cracked, I don't even know how many passwords. It was a lot. And
Believe it.
It's because people still go with the basics. I seen another tweet about passwords earlier. And it's because it's usually capital letter, all lowercase, and then a number, and then special characters. If you're looking to crack passwords, that's what you use.
Yeah, that's
the majority of the passwords you'll get are capital letter, all lowercase, a number, and then a special character. That will get you most company passwords.
Oh, yeah.
That won't get you government sector, but that will get you most company passwords.
Sure.
But it's crazy because I look at it, and PCI DSS, every time I've read the regulation or policy, whatever you want to call it, they're like, oh, we fine you if you don't follow X, Y, and Z. Auditors become friends with security, or they become friends with the CEO or the CIO or CISO, whoever, or all of the above. And so it becomes, you have this? Cool. Oh, you got logs? Okay, cool. Oh, you've got a SIM? Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I've done, we help customers with that. When at the MSP I was at, especially when they were looking to get insurance, they would look through and they had like this PCI checklist and it was just check the box and move on. I think after the fact, I hope, if a breach occurs, then that's when maybe you need to start proving things. I don't know, but I would hope that that's where that comes in.
I had that discussion and I was told, and not with any company, I talked to about it with some other people. I was told that it would cost more for them to secure their network than it does for them to provide some identity protection for a year or 2 years.
Yeah.
Because they get a deal. They've got a contract, they get a deal. So it costs more to secure their network and to do the right thing than it does to just go, I got cyber insurance that'll cover that. Here's some identity protection. We're good to go. Needless to say, what I will say is this. As the price of Bitcoin goes up, that may change. I really do hope the price of Bitcoin skyrockets. Not for me, because I don't have any. I wish I did, but I don't. But because then these companies will actually realize that if they ask for 1 Bitcoin, they're asking for $100,000. Not yet. But I'm hoping it comes to that. Because then these companies will learn.
You talking about for like ransomware?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think most of the time when I've seen ransomware, they just say, 300,000 or whatever the payment amount is, the bounty amount or whatever, the ransom. They say this is the amount in USD or whatever the currency format is, and then it's up to you to go and determine, if you're going to use Bitcoin to pay that, whatever fraction of a Bitcoin you have to send to equal that amount. I think you're muted. I can't hear you.
Dang it. When I was working for my last company, we did incident response a lot. And actually, a lot of the ransomware that's going out now doesn't ask for US dollars. It asks for Bitcoin. You'll send us 10 Bitcoin or 15 Bitcoin or whatever the case may be. So they've completely eliminated the US dollar amount and just said, this is the number of Bitcoins you will send us, and you will send it to this address.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that could go up, it could go down. The actual amount can technically vary. But now that could be because it's a script kiddie. But I doubt it, but it could be because ransomware nodes can change. But they're all based on the same ransomware. I've seen Ryuk. I've seen I didn't get to see WannaCry in action with any company I was with. But I have seen some of the other major players that have come out recently. And yeah, generally speaking, I haven't seen US dollars. I've seen, this is just, you're going to send us
The
10 Bitcoin.
Bitcoin amounts. Nice.
You're going to send us 15 Bitcoin. Now, it only skyrocketed. I wouldn't say skyrocketed, but it only went up to like 20 grand late or mid this year.
Yeah.
Maybe a little later. So it wasn't a whole lot of money, but I foresee if that, for us, it's a lot of money. For a lot of companies, it's not.
Sure.
So I foresee here in the near future, if that amount goes up, so like PayPal's initiating it or allowing Bitcoin, Cash App allows Bitcoin. There's a lot of other places that are going to start allowing it. I see that value rising. So if that number doesn't change, if that 10, hey, you're going to send us 10 Bitcoin, which may have meant $50,000 or $100,000 at one point, if that now equals $1 million,
yeah,
because they're not changing the
Good
message.
point. Sure, I see your point.
That message is the same. That's where it's going to become key to where do these insurance companies or do these companies really think that that insurance is going to matter? Because a lot of these insurance companies are only providing maybe 500 grand insurance, if that.
That's true. But the other factor in all of this that I hope people care about is the reputation. You know, the brand reputation hit that comes along with a breach, and especially how you handle it. You know, I think if we can make it to where, I mean, I don't want to shame people who have breaches. Obviously, that's not what I mean. But I do want to shame people who are negligent and that go about disclosing breaches the wrong way, and that got breached because Equifax didn't patch a server, even though that patch had been out for months. You know, like those type of things. I do think we want to try to shame and make people realize, like, we're not going to do business with you if you're relying on your insurance policy to be what protects you.
I'm all for name and shame for negligence.
Yeah.
But I am not gonna do it for somebody that's doing the right thing and just shit happens, right?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying.
So but again, to your point, if we're gonna shame these companies for negligence, we also have to hold them accountable, because Target was breached by a third-party vendor. I believe Home Depot was too. So that was their. I know Target was the HVAC system.
Yep.
Home Depot, I don't know. I don't recall offhand how they were. But either way, I believe they were both third party. And it was, the HVAC system tied into the network that was on site. It went from there. So we look at these things. Target didn't get burned. They're still up and kicking. You will not see a major corp get burned. I'm sorry. They have way too much money. It's not going to happen unless, and people are going to hate me for saying this because I am not for government involvement at all, but unless government gets involved, puts their foot down, and fines them. How much? I don't know. But for negligence, a company should be fined.
Yeah.
Or, at the very least, these large companies that are supposed to follow PCI or NIST or whatever you want them to follow, SOX, the list goes on. Whatever you want them to follow, they should be fined for negligence. And again, it's not about that initial breach for me. It never will be, because people get breached all the time. Companies get breached all the time. It is about the lateral movement. If you're not doing enough to prevent lateral movement throughout your network, you should be fined. If you do not have network segmentation and you are supposed to be following a regulation, I'm sorry, you should be fined. Yeah. Go kick rocks. You should be burned, because no one should do business with you if you are not doing your due diligence.
Yeah. You know, I think when you talk about the enterprise giant corporate beasts out there, Target, Home Depot size, I agree. It's going to take a lot. It's going to be a lot to take them down. But they don't make up the majority. I mean, maybe if we're talking about revenue or whatever, but there's thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of medium businesses, small businesses.
They're breached every day. It happens, and I get it. We again, this comes back to, do you find them, do you not find them, this, that, and the third.
Yeah, so like, what's
and
the
PCI
answer?
will find them if they're not doing things, but that's only if the auditor is legit. If the auditor is doing what he's supposed to do and actually auditing what they have in play.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen sometimes, especially with some of your smaller businesses where the owner is the person running it, is the person doing it, is the person in front of the auditor. Hey, let's go out for a beer. We'll chat about this. I'll talk to you and we'll figure it out and become buddy. And so you don't see that. And that becomes a personal matter, right? Because you can say they've been audited, so now they're no longer negligent. Because guess what? The auditor said they were good.
I like the conversation we were having earlier around MSPs. And circling back, because when you start talking small to medium-sized business, you think MSP. And I think a lot of MSPs struggle with doing things the correct way because it's more work for them. But I think obviously they're negligent in a lot of ways at not securing themselves, but also their customers who rely on them to keep them safe and to keep them secured. And that there's a discussion around like, well, cybersecurity is expensive and it doesn't make sense. It's just cheaper. We'll just rely on our insurance policy. So what's the answer? Like, we're talking about a lot of problems here. What if we try to brainstorm some solutions? Like, what would work to bring cybersecurity more cost affordable and actually be something that's within reach for these people? You're muted again.
Cybersecurity is affordable. It's not out of reach.
Okay.
You just got to be willing to budget properly, right? So we're so willing to spend money on these huge HR systems that scan resumes. We're willing to spend money on BS systems, on the new blinking lights. It's the newfangled. It has AI. It'll work. Why don't you actually talk to your MSSP? Why don't you actually involve these companies? And that's one of the things, the company I work for now, we get involved in a lot is people bring to us, well, we saw this. Is this what we should be using? Let us look at it. Let us actually figure it out for you. Let us go about it the right way and see if it makes sense. And so that's one of the things that the company I work for brings to the table is let's make sure it makes sense. Because if it doesn't make sense, then no. And some of these MSPs that are trying to become MSSPs don't realize that. They don't hire the personnel. And as you brought up MSSP, they don't hire the personnel to do the job before they implement the job.
Yep.
So they'll say, hey, we're going to do security, but we're going to put this networking guy that knows nothing about firewall roles to do security for you. And that's a problem. Because if you're going to put someone in place that doesn't know, hey, block this port or watch this port or whatever the case may be, all he knows how to do is BGP, EIGRP, or whatever the case may be, without understanding the security constructs behind some of the things. He just knows how to make it work. And that's where the problem comes in. A lot of these companies just want it to work. We have to get away from that mindset. And so to fix it, security isn't an expense. People think of it as an expense, but the reality of it is, between your reputation, the client data, or your personnel data, guess what? It would be more costly not to have security in play, proper security, than it would to say, we just want to check the box.
So how do we reframe that? Like, how do we get these people to understand security is not an expense, it's an operation cost? Like, how do we get people to understand that? Because most people, unless they've been hit, they don't care. Or you start talking about this and they close their checkbook and they're like, no, I'm good.
It's a matter of talking to them and framing it in such a way of pointing out that we prove to be a benefit, right? It is beneficial to have security. It's beneficial not to check the box, but to actually put these things in play because of, and I'm gonna call her out. Alyssa Miller, Alyssa InfoSec, actually has talked about this a lot. and me and her actually had some words about it. We discussed it a little bit months ago. And I think it was on LinkedIn, maybe Twitter. But she has a lot to say about this topic because of the fact that it's not an expense. It is an operational cost. You should have security. And it's to protect not just your reputation, but your people. The problem is not that security is an expense, and this is my opinion, is that too many companies think of people as a resource and a number and not people.
Yeah.
If we actually look at them as people and that their information matters, that's where it'll switch. That's where it'll matter.
And I think that changes to some. I mean, each company is different, but some companies at the smaller scale, especially, they look at them as like a close family that I want to protect. But nobody there understands IT at all, much less how to secure it properly.
But a lot of them, if you're looking at a small business, have a Comcast or whatever company router and gateway. They don't have actual.
That's what I'm trying to say, right? Because they don't understand it. They don't understand IT in general. So how the hell are they going to understand security?
And they can't afford it.
Right.
So even if they want it, they can't afford it. And that comes down to us as security professionals being able to do one of two things: either bite the bullet and help these companies out pro bono, or lower the cost so that we can say, hey, let's at least talk. Let's have this conversation. I'll consult with you for $75, $80 an hour. Yeah, I know it's not a lot for what some of us make. I'm not gonna say me, because it definitely ain't me, but for what some of us make, in the field. But for those that want to benefit small businesses, it's what they can afford.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that thought, and that's something that I've been trying to do. But I want to look at it at a much more scalable thing, because I'm only one person, right? And maybe I can convince other people in the field to do those things too, do it at cost or pro bono. But what can we do? Because there's not enough of us that are willing to do that for the need that's out there. Hell, there's not enough of us that are willing to do
We're
it
never
to
going to
get paid
fix
for
the
the
system.
need that's out there.
We can try, and far be it from me. I'm going to continue to try. That's why I do this show, because I want guys like you. I want female. I want women on that are doing big things, that are trying to help the industry. It doesn't matter who. You could be new, you can be a veteran, you can be in it for a while, for 30 years, or you're just in college. It doesn't matter, because you're trying to make a difference. And that's what it comes down to. We have to make a difference.
Yep.
Little by little, it'll take all of us. And for all those that say that there's a skill shortage, there's not. You just got to put yourself out there. You got to be willing to make a name for yourself in some way, shape, or form. And that's something that, hey, you want to build a name for yourself, go to the mom and pop down the street and say, hey, for free, I'll take a look at this, X, Y, and Z for you. I'll tell you whether or not you're secure, and I'll teach you how to protect yourself. And from there, that company is now going to speak to your name. They're going to say, yes, this person knows what they're talking about.
One of the things when I was going through school that I was a part of, it was a governmentally funded, at least the government provided a grant for a certain amount of funding. It was an organization that partnered with the SDBC, which is Small Business Development Center, and they were looking to create cybersecurity resources and make them available to companies that couldn't afford them. And I was able to be a part of that very, very early. Like, we helped create the name for at least that program here in Oregon. It's called CyberWarrior. And I've lost some of my involvement with that. But it's those type of movements that I think more of us need to get more involved with.
We do. I don't disagree. We do. Because a lot of us look at B-sides or DEF CON or Black Hat or whatever the major talk is to get the word out. Look, I'm going to tell you right now, I do these happy hours not only to get your names out there, but so that other people can see it. And yes, a lot of the conversation gears towards the security industry in general. But for conversations like this and what we're talking about, this is for everybody. This is for the small business, the medium business, the CEO, the low HR, the person that types names into a computer, everybody. And that's what I want to get to, is where we can speak to the masses, because by speaking to the masses, we reach a wider population. So it doesn't matter whether or not you're in security, you can understand what we're talking about. And yes, just like the beginning of this conversation was very much FireEye, security, and everything what we're doing, I want to talk everything in the spectrum, because that's what matters. Reaching the masses, reaching from the person that doesn't know how to turn a computer on to the person that knows how to break into a computer. We need to be able to reach them all, because if we can reach them all, if we can talk to all of it, it's about flipping that switch. It's about being able to talk technical and being able to talk to the person that if you told them port 443, they'd be like,
yeah, no way, they don't know.
What's that? I never heard of it. I don't even know what RAM. What's this power button do? Like,
I don't even know how to spell IT.
So.
No, but you know what's interesting is I think as long as it's relayed, if the information is relayed the correct way, it's insane. It's insane the results that you get.
For sure.
When I was doing security and awareness training, I created this program that I provided for the MSP customers, and it was an on-site thing. I'd go on site and I'd do this. It was a PowerPoint presentation, but it was it was not like death by PowerPoint. You know, it was just like a few words per slide. And it was more than anything, it was a conversation that I had with people. And I made it as engaging as possible. I would have video clips that were humorous, or video clips that showed like a live phishing call. There's an awesome video on YouTube where a dude lets people, Chris Hagnaghy and his company, he lets them do a phishing or a vishing phone call. And it's hilarious to watch. I would definitely recommend it. But I would show that clip in the training, and I'd bring a Wi-Fi pineapple in, and I'd talk about that. And I would clone a website, and I'd show them just how easy it is to do that. You know, and I would do these live demonstrations. I'd help make it I demystified hacking a little bit to where they understood it as, you know, regular people. And
that's a big thing.
It was empowering, because at the end of these trainings, I had management who we've been trying to let us do like more security configurations for years. I had them coming up to me saying, "You're not leaving here until we implement a strong password policy," or "You need to help point me in the right direction to buy a VPN and tell me how we're going to get that on everybody's mobile device."
And that's huge. That's huge.
It's
man.
huge. And so wholeheartedly, I believe if we can fill a room, if we can get people to come in and actually listen to us, and that could be virtual or whatever, but if we can get people to listen to us, I know for a fact I can get them to understand this and actually think about it differently than they ever have.
For sure. But hey, man, I don't want to cut you off. We're well over an hour.
Sure.
So look, check it out. This is Security Happy Hour, and I'm here for all of you. This is Harley Kimball, and he's doing a lot of big things. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so you're notified anytime I put out a new video or go live. Down below is all the ways you can support us, and I will catch you all next time.
See ya, everybody.